Okay, so our next cycle we're going to talk about is the hydrologic cycle. This is still part of that 4C TEAC, talking about abiotic cycles. And so the next one on our list is the hydrologic cycle. Okay, so some vocab review. Abiotic means non-living, so anything that is not alive. Our examples are going to be water, air, rocks, and soil. And then we also have biotic, which means living, so any organism that is alive. Animals, plants, basically anything that's alive. And just a reminder, if on your notes, anything that's bold, red, underline, that's what you're going to be filling in for your guided notes. Okay? So, what is the hydrologic cycle? Well, hydro means water. So, like if you're dehydrated, you don't have enough water. If you're trying to hydrate, you need water or you're getting water. So, hydro just means water. So, this is basically our water cycle. Okay. Water is considered a renewable resource. So, we're going to talk more about renewable and non renewable resources later on. But it's renewable because our water cycle is constantly recycling water through it. In the last section over spheres, you probably remember the hydrosphere. So just kind of a reminder that out of all of the water we have available on Earth, most of that is going to be salt water. So that's like our oceans. Almost 98% of that is salt water. So only 2 to 3% is fresh water. So our lakes, our rivers, our streams. And then when you look at that breakdown of that fresh water, most of our fresh water is stored in glaciers or ice caps. And then we have some in groundwater. So only a very small percent is considered surface water. So once again, those lakes, rivers, streams. Okay. As water moves through the cycle, it's going to change its state. So it might go from solid ice to liquid water to a gaseous water vapor. Okay. Since you've probably talked about the water cycle through school, most of this vocab might be a review plus some new words. Some major processes in the water cycle are going to include evaporation, so that conversion of liquid to gas. Transpiration, you might have heard this word in biology. It's when plant leaves actually release water vapor back into the air when they're going through photosynthesis. And then precipitation, so how water is returning from the atmosphere, like rain, snow, hail, okay? And then condensation, so it's changing from that gas to that liquid, okay? A new word is going to be runoff. So if you haven't heard that word before, any water that's not taken up by plants or is not absorbed into the groundwater is going to become runoff. So it's water that flows back into rivers, lakes, and even the ocean. So we're going to talk next about groundwater and some human impacts that we can have on the water cycle. Okay, so any precipitation and surface water that can be soaked up into the soil and into rocks, it's in storage areas called aquifers. So aquifers are like our underground storage areas. And it's holding this groundwater, that fresh water that's found underground. That's what aquifers are. I'm going to show you an image after this slide that kind of shows the whole process of the water cycle. So different human impacts can be increasing runoff and erosion when plants are cleared and cut down. So if there's not a lot of plant life that can kind of grab that water, that's what increasing runoff means. And then erosion is just that weathering away of the Earth's surface. So as water moves, like goes downstream or is moving from a high place to a low place, it's going to increase that erosion. Okay. A lot of crops use our surface water and groundwater resources like corn, cotton, okay, any fruits, vegetables that are being grown, okay, they actually they can use a lot of that surface water that we have stored. Pollutants released into the atmosphere can cause acid rain. So any carbon dioxide emissions, anything like that, can actually kind of change the water chemistry of precipitation that falls back on to the earth. Okay. And then we are actually using stored groundwater at a rapid rate. It takes a long time for groundwater to recharge. So that's when it kind of becomes potable and we can actually use it. So these are just some different human impacts we can have on the water cycle. All right, so here is an overview of the water cycle. You have so down here is where our groundwater is. So this whole section is going to be our aquifer. Groundwater can kind of be either used for human use, kind of like what we talked about in the last slide. Here's an example of our ocean. So this whole cycle is constantly moving and essentially changing, okay? So on your notes, you have a section where you can fill in some of these, your notes, some of these sections are covered, so you're just kind of filling in those missing words, okay? So from the atmosphere, we can have precipitation down on the oceans, precipitation down over land, okay? So that's changing that state. And then same kind of thing from the oceans, it can evaporate up. When it rains or precipitates, we have that water that's considered runoff from either rivers. It can kind of come this way. If it's becoming infiltrated, so here, down here is where it's being infiltrated underground, so it can be kind of stored as groundwater in our aquifer. So this is just kind of an overview of how the cycle is continuously moving and changing.